Keeping It Real with Tanya and Nettie. We're up to series 3. It's a hashtag word from Spirit. And Tanya, I'm going to throw to you because this came through Spirit straight to you. And yeah, what's our hashtag word of the week?
Our hashtag is hashtag values. So Spirit, they weren't giving me a lot of information about it, really. They were like, yeah, values. And then I was like, okay, but what about it? But they didn't really expand, which handy, thank you. Not really. But let me just bring it up here. So they talked about your values as a person being the they're saying North Star of the direction that you go in life. And I know for me, it was actually interesting. I was I think 1 or 2 years ago, I was back home visiting family. We were out at their cottage, and one of my cousins, she's quite a bit older than me, she said, she goes, if you're anything like me, she said, somebody can come up against you, and if they attack your character or you don't agree with them, she's like, you don't really care. But if somebody comes up against your values, she's like, you push back, and you push back hard. And I'm like,
interesting.
yes.
Yeah.
Then I'm like, holy cow, we've been living apart for 20 some years. Like, I'm impressed that you were able to kind of wrap that all up so nicely. But she's like, I'm the exact same way. She's like, if somebody comes up against me and I don't care, it's good. She's like, but if you come up against one of my values of who I am, she's like, I get very upset. And that's very true for me. If somebody's perhaps, like a situation where somebody thinks that I'm being backhanded, or they think that I'm gossiping, or they think that I'm saying something that I'm not saying, I get really upset because I'm a very authentic, very transparent, very straightforward person. Like, if I have something to say to you, Nettie, I'm going to say it. I'm not going to say it in a kind of sort of way, waiting for you to, maybe pick up what it is that I'm saying. The other thing that they made clear to me is that values are different than beliefs. So
yes.
This is something that people get mixed up, is that one of your values can be faith, but your belief is religion. So you can have the value within yourself of believing in a higher power of some sort, but say you adhere to Christianity, that's your belief. That is not your value.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really interesting. And then when we first came onto the podcast, you said that you used to work in corporate on values, which I think is fascinating. But what I just want to say is that when we're done this, we're going to put on the Facebook page a little values exercise. And I took it from Brene Brown's website. She gets full credit for it on this little worksheet. But what you do is there's this list of a whole bunch of different words, and you go through and you just kind of circle and try to break it down to 10 for the things that you feel like are your values. And a good way to know if it's your values is, like I said, if someone comes up against that in you, you get angry, or you get upset, or it ticks you off. That is typically a pretty clear way to sort of know what your values are. But I actually have a list. Do you want to hear what my values are?
Yeah. Go.
I did this probably 2 or so years ago. And this is my list, and I actually think that it's still quite accurate. Honesty, authenticity, loyalty, communication, integrity, family, attentive, motivated, connection, and personal growth.
Okay, go through that again.
Okay. Honesty, authenticity, loyalty, communication, integrity, family, attentive, motivated, connection, and personal growth.
Cool. I love that because there's a real mix in that. It's, it's across the spectrum of your life, really.
Yeah. And I really feel like there's some ways in which this could change a little bit, but I would say my biggest ones are the loyalty, honesty, authenticity, just personal growth, just always growing, always being introspective, and always coming from a place of deep rooted in my values always.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned before that I did values work in corporate. So I had staff and we would do like weekends away and workshops, and corporate values are something that comes up. Anyone who works in corporate, I'm sure you do it within your own organization that you work in policing. They do a lot on values, and sometimes people in corporate would just go blah because it's done to death, and it's kind of like a tick box that you have to do each year, make sure everyone understands the corporate values. We used to do them in the organization, in our teams, and then personal values. And a lot of the organizations now will actually make like a weekly thing when they get together, or in a newsletter or whatever they're sending out. Or a girlfriend was telling me their organization has like a box that you can actually sort of award someone or credit someone for what they've done that worked within the values of the organization. And that goes out to everyone to say, well done, Tanya, for, doing X, X, and X, or being trustworthy. Whatever it is. And it's aligned with the values of the thing. So when actually I heard values first, I was like a bit cringed, because I was like, oh, not my corporate years again, and not actually talking about values for no reason, because a lot of people just tick boxed it. And it's really important not to do that. So I love it in a way, because it is actually, knowing what your values are important, but also knowing what your compromises to your values are. And when someone is making you move outside of the comfort of your values, which is actually hard to do, because your core values are almost like your concrete shoes, right? They're the things
like who you are.
Yeah, you can't take this off me. And when someone starts to stretch you away from what your core values are, it's really interesting to see how far you'll go. So, and this is really relevant in things like unhappy and unhealthy relationships, or overpowering people within a job, or a friend that you go away with, that's pushing you what they think is out of your comfort zone, but actually it's putting out of your value zone. And you imagine a teenager that goes into into a mall with mates, and then one of the mates nicks something, and that core value of that person or that family that is actually trust and truth, then they're like, I don't want to steal like my friends. And then all the friends are saying, hey, you should steal this, you should just take one thing. It's like, to get in the club, you've got to do that. And it's like, will that child at that crucial stage say, I'm going to stretch that value. I'm going to say, okay, I want to be truthful, I want to be trustworthy, except for this one case. I'm going to go out of my value for this one case. And it's an interesting thing to then, once you've gone out of that, then do you go, well, this is always okay? It's like, who can bend your values, and when do they say concrete? And I think as we get older, we are more determined to not let our values influence, but there's definitely people that can put you out of your value influence box. Interestingly, I was just thinking about mine, and truth is one of my biggest ones. I cannot handle lying. I don't see that, like, there's slight white lies, which is like, you walk out and say, did I sing that tune well? And it's like, oh yeah, it's pretty good. Like, you're tone deaf, right? Where it's like, is that the line where you get pulled over to say that's okay? But there's just generally lying. And when you're put in the position of being someone that you care about and is around you that lies all the time, and your value is actually that truth is one of your core, probably your biggest core values, what do you do with that? Like, where do you sit? Do you sit constantly saying, I don't agree, that I know you're lying, that's wrong? Or do you let that person have their own core values where truth and lying isn't an issue for them? And how much do you be around them? How much energy do you get from that? How much does that just grate on you? And I think when someone grates on you, it often is that your core values are just different.
That's exactly it. Or when you can't quite see eye to eye with somebody, often it's a values issue. Which makes can make people completely incompatible. I remember having a conversation with somebody and they said, oh, well, you're, I think they said I was rigid or something. And it was like, yeah, but this value, this way that I feel isn't going to change. I could be in this situation and I'm going to have it. I could be in this situation and I'm going to have it. And I could be in this situation and I'm going to have it. And it was a very clear, when they sort of showed me the difference between beliefs and values, it made it very clear to me what it was actually in that discussion that we were having. The person was talking about beliefs and I was talking about values. So
Yeah.
there was no way to actually connect in that conversation, because it was like, well, these are just ideas. And it's like, no, I
Yeah.
have this core value that is not going to change. And when you say truth, mine is honesty. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Truth would actually probably be a more valuable one for me to write down. The other thing that drives me bonkers is when people aren't upfront, straightforward, and they aren't, and they'll like back channel on things, and
Yeah.
they'll
They
kind
dance
of,
around the thing. And it's like, what are
yeah,
you actually trying to say? Like, just spit
yeah.
it out. Yeah.
I dated a guy like that years ago, where he would be saying something and I would be sitting there going, um,
Yeah.
is he trying to tell me something slyly, or like, I just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Yeah, that drives me nuts. Like, just speak to me like an adult. I'm not reading into what you're saying. Please don't read into what I'm saying, because we're all adults. Like, we should just be saying it,
Yeah,
you
and I
know?
think that's one of the values that we both have. We both have the honesty, but we both have that straightforwardness. Like, if
Yeah.
anything, within the way that we met each other and didn't really know each other, that anyone who's listening now that didn't listen to our first podcast, go back to series 1, number 1. Tanya and I had never met before, and that's sort of, we came on weirdly. Just the stories on there, I won't bore those, already know it. But yeah, it is I think a lot of our values are the same, and that straightforwardness. We're straight out going, no, I don't think what you're saying is the way I see it, or like,
Yeah.
explain more. It's just like, and so we don't have
Mm-hmm.
this kind of like behind the scene going, oh, how should I tell her this? It's just like, we're like, nah. I don't see it that way. Explain
We're
more,
just gonna say it. Exactly. That's something that after you came to Canada and we had our visit, I mean, we're different. We come from different lifestyles, we come from different families, we have very different circumstances, but our values are very much aligned. We
Yeah.
haven't had a tiff, we haven't had a disagreement. There's been absolutely zero concerns.
Yeah, that's
I
right. And
think because our
because they
values
align.
align.
Yeah.
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 And so what Spirit's showing me right now is that when they're showing me like a sailboat sort of cutting through the water and catching the wind really well. They're saying that sailing through life is a lot easier and you don't veer so far from your course when you can get clear on what your values are and not go against them. They're also saying that when we go against our values, it can create an internal feeling of anxiety, because
Yeah.
we're going against who we are. And they're being confusing. They're saying too many things at once. But I'm going to need you to talk so that I can
Yeah.
get
Okay,
clear on
listen.
what it is that they're saying.
Yeah, I think too, actually sitting down and writing even just your 4 core values. So using that worksheet that Tanya's going to attach to our Facebook, and hopefully we can attach it maybe to the end of this YouTube. I don't know if I can do that, but if I can, it'll be there. And getting that actually 4 down, and start working through your week going, like, when I'm feeling uncomfortable, is this because it is attacking one of my core values? Look at the people that you work with that you get along really well with and that you don't, even within your family dynamics, and start saying, where are our core values are different? And maybe if you're in an unhappy relationship, or you're in, whether it's a friendship, like a marriage relationship, or a work relationship, or even your children, sit down with them and say, hey, let's do this together, and make sure that our core values are aligned. Because you do change, as you mentioned earlier. As you get older, when you have children, family jump to the top of the list, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, that for me, they
Yeah.
were always there, but not in that thing. And it was like, oh, next minute, I'd probably bend all my other values for my family, like I would lose them all before I
Absolutely.
lost that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So what they were saying is that values are not the same as being compatible. So what they're trying to say is that when you have people in your core group, it's, I don't know why they keep bringing up sailing, but say you all like sailing, that doesn't mean that you are compatible. If you like mountain biking and you have the same interest in TV shows, they're talking about that being a very surface way of looking at compatibility. The compatibility needs to be at a deeper level of your core values, because one
Yeah.
can like sailing and the other can like BMXing, and one never sails and one never BMXs. But if you still have the same core values, there can be significant compatibility with a
Yeah.
lot of differences on the surface. That's what they're trying to say. The other thing that they're coming back with, this is another checkpoint that you come to as you're going on your journey to check in with yourself. They're saying when conflict arises or compromising situations arise, to make sure that you're following your North Star. I don't know what North Star. What does that
Yeah.
mean? Is our
You're in the
star a North
sailing.
Star?
You're in the sailing side still.
I don't know, but they're saying follow your North Star.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because, when I talked about corporate earlier and why we actually, all corporations do value statements. There's a reason. And it is bringing back to that thing to make sure that everyone is on the same page from the core values. Because like you said before, it doesn't matter what you do in the organization. It doesn't matter whether the job's the same or different or what your interests are. Everyone has to come back to that core value, and then they'll all be moving forward. So you're exactly what Spirit is actually saying is the reason we say, what are your core values? Because it is the center of it all. It is the commonality in anything. So when you've got a group of friends, you'll often find that although you're all different and you bring you different things, your core values are the same. And, my son just went to uni. Within the first week, he met 3 other boys, and he said, it's like we've known each other for years. And they have the same core values. When you look down and you look at their family lines and what's important to them, that is what has made them just instantly go, we're best mates. We're going to move out together. They're like inseparable now, in such a short amount of time. But the power of our values, our core values, is huge. So I mean, I can see why #values has come in line, because when we're talking about the biggest star, and diet, body, mind and body, they all have to align with our values. And if you haven't taken the time lately to think about what they are and think about where they're being compromised, then that can lead to, we all seek this happiness, which is just an emotion, but we seek a better, positive place. Knowing your core values and making sure everything then aligns to your core values, and finding out what it is that's actually moving you away from a value that's important to you. Like even family, we talk about family and the need for being honest and trustworthy and belonging, like actually feeling like you are loved. Like love for me is also one of my core values, as in showing love. So making sure that you appreciate and show love, and don't get offended by other people's like growth, because often I see someone will go, I just booked a holiday to somewhere, and you watch all these people just go back going, oh bitch, like, oh, I wish I was going. And for me, I go, oh my gosh, this is awesome. I feel like when you went to Mexico, I've never been to Mexico. I was so excited the whole
I'm the
time you were
same
there.
way. I'm so happy for people, but I'm also grown up enough that I can look at that and go, oh my God, I'm jealous. I wish I was going, but I'm also thrilled for you. You deserve it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a positive, to say, oh, I wish I was with you, is not against my values, but my value is to first look at that from that person's eyes and the excitement for them, rather than, oh, well, you're going, what does that mean? How do I measure myself on the ladder of, oh, she's doing something, what am I doing, what am I doing, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that has taken growth over time, but it's also something that I see in a lot of people, that is a value that I struggle to be friends with them, and I struggle to work with them when their core value is actually to look at themselves first rather than be excited for the other person. And
Oh,
then
absolutely.
and then
That's not the
maybe
kind of
go,
person I want to be around.
yeah, I'm going to add Mexico on my list now, you know, like to go, oh, that's awesome. Tell me about it. I'm definitely going to, I'm so jealous. I wish I was with you. You know,
Yeah.
I'm going to add it onto my list, is still putting that person first and their thing first. So I'm trying to think
Mhm.
as we go. It's often hard to put a word to your value. You know, it's almost an emotion and a feeling. So I'm going to go through the list of the
Well,
worksheet that you did and put words to it.
and that's
Yeah.
interesting because as you sort of talk about that love, I think the core value for me would be connection.
Yeah.
So just as you were talking about that, I'm like, I should maybe take a look at my list and give it a bit of an upgrade. Because when I did it the first time, there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words. That's what I like about this Brene Brown one, is it actually took a bunch of similar type words and
Yeah.
put it all together and broke them down. So yeah, I need to look at it again. I definitely need to look at it again. I also get this very distinct feeling that hashtag values has a purpose for later, and I don't know what it is. So here we
Watch
are.
this
Thank you.
space.
Right. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us for this little mini podcast, hashtag values. Please like and subscribe. As Nettie said, go back to the first podcast where we talked about us meeting, and we also talked about our values in the podcast where we talked about Nettie and I meeting, and we talked about having similar values. So please go back and take a listen, and we will see you all next week.
Yep, and remember, your hashtag homework this week is to jump on either Facebook, or if I can get onto here and look up the worksheet and see if you can do it. Maybe put your top 4 in the comments, and we'll see whether or not people actually have the same core values that are listening to us. It'd be quite interesting to see whether they're all there.
That absolutely would be. Absolutely.